Tonight, the battle against historic and deadly wildfires ripping through Los Angeles. Terrifying escapes from the raging inferno.
I just had to get out of my car and start walking.
Everything's gone.
The desperate evacuations and catastrophic scenes. The race to replace Justin Trudeau narrows. What the contenders are saying tonight.
How do you feel about the leadership race?
I've been reflecting.
I have had a number of colleagues that have approached me.
A police vehicle carrying Ontario's premier gets into a crash.
I'm okay. This head's like limestone. It's hard as a rock.
Plus, breaking down Donald Trump's threat to take over Canada. Is it even possible? And divided on joining together.
We support Canada being Canada.
How Americans are feeling
I think it's lunacy.
about the prospect of a merger with their northern neighbor.
If we adopt free healthcare, I'm interested.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. At least 5 people are dead tonight, and hydrants are running dry as flames from 6 separate wildfires push thousands of firefighters into one of their biggest battles against nature. This is what it looks and sounds like. More than 80,000 people forced to evacuate, 1.5 million people without power, and preliminary damage at more than $70 billion. The fire forcing the LA Kings to postpone their home game against the Calgary Flames tonight. The NHL posting their thoughts are with hockey fans and the people of LA during this difficult time. CTV's Andrew Johnson starts us off with what's already been the most destructive fire in the city's history.
An apocalyptic scene from the air, up close, is truly terrifying. Flames fueled by hurricane-force winds are tearing through the hills surrounding Los Angeles, a region that hasn't seen rain in hundreds of days.
And the fire is growing. We have no percentage of containment.
It's Armageddon. I'm driving through a war zone right now, and I don't even know what to say.
More than 1,000 structures have been destroyed, despite the best efforts of hundreds of firefighters.
This is a tragic time in our history here in Los Angeles, but a time where we're really tested and see who we really are.
At least 70,000 people were ordered to evacuate, but abandoned cars blocked the escape route. Actor Steve Guttenberg among the Good Samaritans trying to help.
Leave the key in the car so guys like me can move those cars so fire trucks can get through.
Officials brought in a bulldozer to clear the way. Others stayed behind, risking their lives to save homes armed only with hoses.
This is home. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go?
Caught in the chaos, Canadian expat Carolyn Day and her family, who are now holed up in an Airbnb. Their home west of LA is still standing. Much near it is not.
I watched my son's high school burn down live on TV with him, where we were married, our local beach, the lifeguard tower, everything's gone.
They don't know where they'll sleep tomorrow.
The comfort is that we're together as a family and the cat and the dog are with us. So even if our community burns down or our house burns down, we're together.
One family among thousands on the run from wildfire flames in the middle of winter.
We're used to seeing fires in California, so in some ways this feels familiar, but it's not normally during January. And the other piece is that now we're starting to see a lot more stories about fires in our own backyard. This is just one planet.
Riskin says the last couple of years in Southern California have been much wetter than usual. In the past 8 months, much drier. So a lot of freshly grown vegetation has now become kindling. Omar.
Such a devastating situation. All right, Andrew, thank you. A much different story across Canada, where snow and extreme cold are the big concern. In the nation's capital, a person sleeping on the street was found frozen to death. Paramedics say the man was found early Monday when the low was -17. For the first time since the Prime Minister announced he will resign, his national caucus met today in Ottawa, a gathering dominated by discussions about the race to replace him. CTV's Mike LeCouture on who's in and who's out.
Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc believes the best way to serve Canada is by concentrating on his current job. That's why he's not running in the Liberal leadership race.
I will be solely focused on the real economic threat that American tariffs represent to the Canadian economy and to Canadian workers.
Chrystia Freeland hasn't spoken publicly since her blistering resignation last month, and she refused to answer questions today.
Are you going to run? Happy New Year.
While Freeland contemplates her next move, a number of her former cabinet colleagues are considering running for the leadership post.
Over the past few days, I've received a lot of support from across the country. And of course, I've met with my team many times, my core team. And I've been reflecting.
I have had a number of colleagues that have approached me to encourage me to consider it. I certainly have been considering it.
Several Liberals have said they want to see candidates who will shift the current political leaning of the party.
Bringing the party back to the center is very important. We're not an NDP party.
Prime Minister,
the leadership race triggered by Justin Trudeau's departure will have to be a shortened one. And there are concerns over safeguarding it from foreign interference. Current rules allow non-citizens to vote for the next Liberal leader, something MPs did bring up with party president Sachin Mehra, who was in the caucus meeting.
They made very clear that they are recognizing the concerns and they want to address them, and they're going to deliberate as to how to protect the interests of Canadians and the selection of the process.
In a statement to CTV News, a Liberal Party spokesperson said meetings about the leadership race will continue this week, adding establishing the rules will take some time. Omar.
All right, Mike, thanks. CTV News has confirmed Canada is preparing retaliatory tariffs in several key U.S. states targeting goods such as steel and orange juice. CTV's Kathy Lee on how industries here are preparing for Trump's punishing tariffs with just 12 days to go until his inauguration.
Of the $1 trillion in Canadian goods and services exported out of the country yearly, a third goes to the United States, meaning Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs detrimental to Canada's economy.
It's ridiculous.
Roy Newman, a grain farmer in Alberta, will be hit.
The kicker is that our main market for wheat is based out of Minneapolis, so we'll have to have a discount on our markets.
Agriculture, auto, oil, and gas, just some industries expected to be severely impacted. To maintain competitiveness, a price drop will be necessary, or scaling back production.
Up to 150,000 Canadian families could be out of work just from that one policy move alone. It'd be worth 2.5% of our GDP. That's enough to put Canada into an immediate recession.
But the potential impact not exclusive to Canada.
We would see American prices go up by the amount of the tariff, and so that would be bad news for American consumers.
Despite this, Trump doubled down on his threat, saying America doesn't need Canada's goods, including dairy, lumber, and...
They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit.
But an expert says the Canadian and American auto industries are deeply intertwined.
The people who are employed in this country are employed by American companies or buy their raw materials and their parts from American companies. So you cannot have a disruption in Canada without an immediate disruption in the U.S.
With the looming threat of tariffs, experts say while doing business with the United States is crucial, perhaps the country should look to other markets instead of heavily relying on just one customer. Kathy Lee, CTV News, south of Calgary.
Ontario's premier says he is okay after a vehicle he was in was struck by another.
I'm okay. This head's like limestone. It's hard as a rock.
Doug Ford's spokesperson said the other driver is believed to have suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Ford had just left an event where he floated the idea of a deeper energy partnership with the United States while also rejecting the idea of a union with the Americans. As CTV's Heather Wright reports, Canada isn't the only country taking a stand against Trump's tirades.
Once unbelievable, the comments have become unsettling. Take over Greenland, seize the Panama Canal, erase the Canada-U.S. border. Threats that have world leaders wondering how best to respond to the U.S. president-elect. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz expressed surprise at Donald Trump's comments, saying every country must respect international borders, whether they are a small or powerful nation. While Mexico's president suggested renaming the United States. América Mexicana. A response to Donald Trump's stated desire to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America.
With Trump, it's always difficult to separate the rhetoric, the bombast.
Today, Ontario's premier walked a political tightrope, saying he wants to stop wasting time on, quote, ridiculous ideas about merging, while urging collaboration on a new trade deal.
We could be the most, richest, wealthiest, prosperous, safest jurisdiction anywhere in the world if we work together.
While some have dismissed Trump's comments as unrealistic musings or negotiating tactics, they have thrown even more uncertainty into global politics, providing an early test of how to handle the second Trump term.
Don't get into a situation where you're escalating the rhetoric, because you don't want to taunt the schoolyard bully.
Experts also say Trump is the master of distraction, making these imperialistic comments the same week as the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection and as the Attorney General prepares to release the final report into Trump's efforts to subvert the 2020 election. Omar.
Heather, thank you. The brash idea of becoming the 51st state is something Trump has been touting for weeks, but can it even happen? CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin takes a look.
Could "Oh Canada" actually make way to a star-spangled banner yet waving here? Well, experts say making Canada the 51st state wouldn't exactly be painless.
If the Americans wanted to conquer us militarily, I guess so. Otherwise, not really. And certainly not in the amount of time that the president-elect thinks it would take for this to happen.
Among the roadblocks to knocking down the longest undefended border in the world, lengthy constitutional processes on both sides. In Canada, we would need a constitutional amendment disbanding our 158-year-old country. That would mean votes by the House of Commons, the Senate, the provinces, and years of legal wrangling. South of the border, it would also mean votes in the Senate and Congress.
I don't think that most Republicans in particular would really want Canada to become the 51st state. We'd receive approximately the number of seats in the House of Representatives that California has.
Many experts have viewed this as a tactic, Trump yanking at the fabric of Canada.
The key thing right now is that Canada must not panic. Canada must get its act together.
But this country's resources may be attractive. And some experts say if the U.S. decides to force Canada's hand, then what?
The U.S. is a permanent member of the Security Council.
Lawyer and professor Frédéric Bérard says he doesn't see any international laws as effective remedies to stop annexation.
So it's going to be probably a matter of diplomacy. Can we think that the G7 could help?
And as far as a military takeover by the neighbors is concerned, well, that's not something that Canada has ever prepared for, something that seems highly, highly unlikely, and something Trump seems to have ruled out too. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
And coming up.
I think if we adopt free healthcare, I'm interested.
What Americans are saying about the idea of joining their northern neighbor. A Canadian warship is sailing into international intrigue tonight off the shores of Taiwan. CTV's Adrian Gobriel is on board HMCS Ottawa and takes you on its vital mission on the high seas.
With a maple leaf adorned to its ironclad exterior, HMCS Ottawa is operating in an area that has become a flashpoint for geopolitical tensions with China. The frigate is part of Operation Horizon to encourage open passage through vital waterways for all ships in the Indo-Pacific. The Canadian warship and its crew of roughly 250 personnel are now traveling through the Luzon Strait, which separates the Philippines to the south and Taiwan to the north. At 175 kilometers in length, the nearby Taiwan Strait sees more than 20% of global maritime shipping pass through its waters each year. Canadians rely on the shipping corridor and Taiwan for its microchips and semiconductors, found in our phones, vehicles, and computers.
It's vital economic territories and trade routes, and that means that it's vital from a military standpoint.
An attempt to control the strait and surrounding seas by China is being seen by some as a strategic military maneuver that could leave Taiwan and other Western allies vulnerable. Enter the Canadian Air Force Cyclone, seen here making a precarious landing on the back of HMCS Ottawa. Each warship deployed by the Royal Canadian Navy to this region in recent months as part of Operation Horizon has been equipped with one of these helicopters. Why is the cyclone so integral to HMCS Ottawa?
Extend the reach of the ship's sensors. So we have a radar on board, we have a dipping sonar on board, we have sonobuoys, we also have a electro-optic and infrared camera, various equipment that helps us find ships or find submarines much further out ahead of Ottawa than it could ever do.
The extended reconnaissance reach allows HMCS Ottawa to safely carry out its objective of promoting order along the Taiwan Strait, as well as across the East and South China Seas.
It's a benefit to Canadians that we're out here just trying to keep the world a little safer.
A recent deployment by the Canadian Navy through the Taiwan Strait this past summer was condemned by the Chinese Defense Ministry, who warned Canada to be cautious of their words and deeds on the Taiwan issue. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Still ahead, the costly miscalculation of hiring the wrong home contractor. Tonight, another home renovation gone wrong. In part 2 of her series, CTV's Sarah Plowman speaks to a mother and daughter who claimed they were deceived by a contractor and how you can protect yourself.
Cramped and without running water. This was home for the Kovaniches as they waited for their dream to take shape.
This is where you were living for how long?
For almost 2 years. Figured we'd only be in it for a few months.
Partway through their home build, they switched contractors, hired this man, Brandon Boudreau. Recently, he was convicted of fraud over $5,000 when he failed to do work at another house in spring and summer of 2022. But in February of that year, the Kovaniches saw Boudreau as the solution to their problem and a great worker they'd known for months.
He seemed to be very trustworthy.
They sent him a deposit and e-transfers as requested. In total, more than $145,000. Workers were on site. He texted he bought a long list of supplies. A few months in, problems piled up. Electrical wiring was cut in the house with no explanation. The Kovaniches say the well company hadn't been paid. Promises by Boudreau to install windows went unfulfilled. The Kovaniches say they asked the contractor to drop off their stuff.
And that's when we found out that he hadn't purchased anything.
They also didn't have the appliances Boudreau was storing. Appliances that, in this text to another client, Boudreau sold, except the client says they never got them. The Kovaniches found themselves at the bottom of an uphill battle shared by Canadians every year. Hundreds of homeowners complained to the Better Business Bureau about a general contractor over the past 3 years, but many, like the Kovaniches, never report it. The Kovaniches' fight to get their money back has been messy. They first hired a lawyer, called police, and blasted Boudreau online. The Kovaniches paused their pursuit of criminal charges when Boudreau's family started to pay them back, paying for their appliances, flooring, toilets, and an unpaid bill. Boudreau also sent money, but slowly.
And even at that rate, it would have taken me 20 years to complete my house.
The contractor claimed he owed them $40,000. The Kovaniches say they're owed tens of thousands more. When they asked police to charge Boudreau, RCMP first said the Crown said it's a civil matter. The Kovaniches spent thousands of dollars on a lawyer to fight the case in civil court, but had to walk away.
There's no way that I would be able to afford it.
In late October, a potential break. The Crown accepted their case. Boudreau was charged with fraud over $5,000. 2.5 years on, the family spent thousands more to make their upstairs livable, but still have no kitchen cupboards, no finish downstairs, and almost no hope.
Well, I suppose I could say I'm in financial ruin. I don't have 2 cents to rub together.
Boudreau denied or did not respond to CTV News' multiple requests for an interview, but we had questions. So we went to his house where he's under house arrest. No one answered the door. We left a note but did not hear back before this broadcast. In previously filed civil court documents, Boudreau defended his work with the Kovaniches and claims the two sides agree to settle their outstanding issues, something the Kovaniches dispute. None of these allegations have been tested in court. A trial has been set for next year. As for how homeowners can protect themselves, the Better Business Bureau says people should always have a contract where things like key timeframes and costs are in writing. Get 3 bids and do your homework, because they say the cheapest option isn't always the best one. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, St. John.
Still ahead, Americans weigh in on the merger musings. As we told you earlier in the show, there has been a lot of talk from Donald Trump about making Canada the 51st state, and we've heard a lot about how Canadians are feeling about it. But what do Americans think about removing the border and the two countries joining? CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin hit the streets to find out.
In the nation's capital, some Americans take Donald Trump's threat seriously.
Whether we like it or not, it's the most powerful person in the world. And when the president talks, people listen.
These friends from Michigan, they're practically Canadians, tried to apologize.
It also feels disrespectful, and I'm very sorry about that, but yeah. I don't think he fully understands what presidents are allowed to do and not do.
Trump's threat to use economic force to make Canada part of the U.S. came as a shock.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
He even posted what a new U.S. map would look like.
Well, I'm okay with Trump. And as far as Canada goes, they're our neighbor, and I love them. And I don't agree with them being our 51st state.
Some wondered if this is the art of the steal, what's Trump really after?
Does he want our maple syrup?
Maybe. Who knows?
But some Americans wouldn't mind a Canadian takeover.
I think if we adopt free healthcare, I'm interested.
As America's closest ally and largest trading partner, just the thought of becoming a state had this Canadian shaking his head.
It's a threat that we need to take seriously. He's shepherding the world's most important organization, the U.S. government.
Everyone, it seems, has an opinion, even Edgar, a conservative puppet with a right-wing website.
Donald Trump should take over Canada. However, I think we should decline Quebec.
But hold on. Canada must remain sovereign, says Brittany Siegler.
Like, I need to come there to get away from this.
So maybe we'll give the puppet the last word.
What do you say?
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, and let's keep it that way. Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
And that's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.